Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
Surmani,
ma'am.
did you call me?
Yes, ma'am.
Please tell me.
Ma'am, I have a small doubt regarding decorator of TypeScript. If you could please, I'm trying a lot, but I couldn't get over that concept.
Decorators.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Noted. Let me plan some session for the same by today itself.
Okay.
All right. Let's continue with directives. So requesting all of you to please pay attention. So there is a video about a web page. I'm sure this kind of web page we are coming across. So I want all of you to observe. I know this is one of the attractive UI kind of a thing. So tell me, what are all the features that will help that is there in this page to give you a rich user experience in terms of view component.
Button.
So what is this? Technically, this is called as, can you see? There is a collapse sidebar, side nav bar. So whenever we want, you can tap or you can click and you can able to view that. All other remaining times, it will not be there. And what you have observed on the search option,
Let's show the options.
Technically, whenever if I type WASH, so it is listing out the cities, places in Washington. So apart from, in order to navigate, we don't have only the links. So we also have an icons to navigate between different components. So we have icons, which is, please observe. So observe what is happening here, and this autofill option in your search. So by the way, nowadays the applications are coming with rich user experience. Anything you observed on this image when you place your mouse hover on that card component? What is happening?
It moves.
See, have you noticed nowadays in YouTube, you will not click that YouTube video when you have your
That option.
mouse hover or this thing hover on that video. in that small tile, the video keeps on playing. Have you observed this feature in YouTube?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So likewise, when we are in this e-commerce, so when I keep my mouse on any of the product image, you will get that zoom effect. I will not say some 25% zoom in will happen and then it will again go out when you keep your mouse cursor outside. Same thing is happening on this video. Can you observe?
Yes, ma'am.
So how can we achieve the zoom in, zoom out using CSS property? Can you recollect and tell me? See, all these are just to use front-end user interface experiences. So again, I'm recollecting, we are in web page development and right now we are in front-end module. Can you recollect and tell me the property which is responsible for this image?
Animation.
Mouse on. One mouse over.
That is an event. I'm asking about CSS property.
Ma'am.
Mouse over.
Animation.
Video.
Mouse over is an event. When I click, when I tap, likewise when I mouse over. I'm asking about the CSS property which is responsible. Make a note of it, find it out. And this autofill option, this navigation is possible with the help of icons. So always you will find a nav bar. So especially the side nav bar. So whenever the user wants, they can able to view convenient method. And nowadays the applications are come with the toolbar with this handy search option. And whenever if you search, the recent search or autofill option has been enabled with the respective search made by the user. And many applications are coming up with automatic theme change whenever the user wants to change the theme of the web page. Just an something we are relating to the web page recent user interface. See, we are going to implement all, by the way. Depending upon the user preference. So we can able to switch from one to other. So let us take a closer look at some of the feature that makes rich user experiences of front-end apps. Some of the features which makes our user interface to be look. Is this a video? I think I have, this is a video, it is not playing. No. All right. So the example which I have shared, so we will be having n number of cards. So every time when you go, so there were lots of features. So YouTube is one example. One example I can relate with this richer user experiences. So nowadays, as I said, the video will be automatically played even though it is in this style form. Zoom in and zoom out automatically. You can render all the card component one after another. So all these features are embedded in application like YouTube. So how can validations be done smartly? This validation is not new to us. We have done validation in different technologies. Even the password validator. So how we have achieved validations in different technologies in different ways? Can you recollect the ways we have done validation? Using
Regex.
by using regex. So both server side scripting and client side scripting. I can have my regex. Apart from that, so what are all the different ways? Recollect and tell me. So how can validations be done smartly? And we already have accomplished this validation in different technologies in different way. So one is regex. I'm not asking how we are implementing. What are all the ways we are doing validations and we are making this validation, checking the data and displaying the message smartly, effectively. No, you recollect and tell me. I want you all to think. So simple validation. I have my email ID, I have my password. So what are all the way we can do this validation smartly? We will use the concept of regex. We were in front end. I'm talking about user interface experience. Technically, we need to use regex and we need to accomplish this.
I'm using equals method, contains method.
क्लास म्हणतो कसा 10:30 वाजता म्हणतो तो.
I'm not asking about the way we are achieving validation, in which and all the way the validation can be done smartly. You have not got my question.
With the test method.
Who's that? Can you repeat? I'll help you. I'll help you.
With the test method.
What method?
Test.
No. Don't get into technology part. I'm talking about UI point of view. Okay, I'll help you. See, you remember we are doing validation. So whenever if I have this login page, let's take email ID and password. So whenever if I click submit button, if the value I've not filled, if it is empty, I need to display error message. So only if it is empty or if it is incorrect values, we will display error message. So apart from that, you remember, we will also display individual error message and also what?
Summary.
All. Let's assume if I have some 10 fields, we have an option. This is also validation. Validation, what we are doing in validation. So whenever the user enters the value, we are validating the data. So we are validating and we are displaying an error message, in which and all the way the error message can be done smartly. So one is we can display error message, or you can display with asterisk notation. Also, we came across on this. So if I have n number of fields, so I can able to display an individual error message. Or otherwise, I will collate all the error messages and I will display in the form of summary. Or otherwise, you remember the required part in HTML. So depend upon the browser preloaded, the required validation will display the appropriate error message. Also, we can display with alert box. So how can be validation done smartly? A step ahead, we can also create what? What is the last sprint we discussed after our component? You remember password validator? Can I use any library, Angular library, user-defined library, or predefined library, and I can display an error message based on validating the data?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Possible?
Yes,
See,
ma'am.
Again, I'm repeating, I'm not asking the ways, how we are achieving. Again, I'm repeating, we are in front end, user interface module. Here the question is, how can we do validation smartly? We can do by these way. I can display an error message, or I can give this asterisk red color notation. I can go for collating all the error messages, summary part, or I can give an alert box and I can give, so the data is incorrect. Or I can use the least case, I can use library also and I can display an error message. So in Angular, we can use library and you can overcome the problem of writing the validation code again and again. So HTML provides required attribute to achieve this validation. So depend upon the browser specification, you will get the error message. Look into this carefully. Adding a ripple effect to buttons. Have you noticed these kind of effect?
Yes, ma'am.
See, if you noticed in this flash video, so I am keeping a cursor on a button, hello world button. The same is for edit button, the same is for this plus add button. Do I want to write this ripple effect logic thrice for every HTML element? No. If I'm writing for all, I will be having lots of hundreds of controls. I cannot able to repeat the logic. If I have 3 buttons, for 3 buttons, I will not write the logic to achieve this ripple. Instead, what we can do?
Locate the element and allow.
So if I want to achieve this ripple effect for some 5 controls in my HTML, we will write the logic once. Whenever we want, we will call the logic for the HTML controls. Will it be possible?
Yes, ma'am.
Can a ripple effect on multiple buttons be added by writing the logic only once? So if I have 3 buttons,
Yes, ma'am.
along with button, I will not write the logic to achieve this ripple effect. Instead, I will write the logic once in my project whenever I want that that display. Again, I'm telling the UI part. So I will be activating for all the controls. Whenever I want, I will be adding that attribute, the respective attribute. So one example. So we are going to achieve. So one functionality I will create and I will reuse in my application. More than one also is possible. Have you ever noticed in medium.com highlighting text? Who's this? Hi, Hasina. Guys, give me 1 minute. I didn't get you. Oh, I want to send Gaurav to breakout room. Right. Yes, guys, let's continue. Have you ever noticed how medium.com highlights text? So not only in Medium, in Kindle, so many of our portal, reading portal, we will be having this feature. See, have you ever observed this highlighting content on a page? You can try this in our Medium website. Here the question is, in order to highlight, do we want to write the logic again and again? No, I will be writing one logic. So whenever I'm selecting, I will be calling that functionality so that whatever the selected block, it will get highlighted. So we will be writing the logic once for highlighting. Highlighting with what? Highlighting with font bold, font color or background color. We will be writing the logic once and we will bind whenever we want that functionalities. Do you wish to create and apply the same visual effects across different components? Answer me yes or no.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
From the slide one, we were discussing about different visual effects we have experienced and we are going to implement the same for our web page components. So again, whenever we are adding some effects, so I cannot add every time. I will be adding only once and wherever I want, I will apply. So this can be achieved with the help of directives. So we are going to perform DOM manipulation using Angular directives. So you quickly recollect the think and tell slides. So last some 7-8 slides. So everywhere we are going to achieve here highlighting the text. I'm writing the logic to highlight the selected text. We are going to write the logic for this ripple effect. We are going to write the logic for validation. Collapsial side navbar, autofill our search entry. Zoom hover, whenever I'm keeping a mouse over, the zoom for certain percentage of zoom in and zoom out. So all those logics we will be writing once and we are going to apply for our DOM elements. So that can be achieved in Angular with the help of directives. Shall we get into the topic?
Yes.
Can you relate? So again, we are not going to relate something with behavioral part. No. So we are going to perform some effects, some additional extra effects of our DOM elements that we are going to achieve with the help of directives. So we are going to perform DOM manipulation. So our DOM elements, we are going to do some manipulation with all these effects, some functionalities on various scenarios by using directives. I said this earlier, we have 3 types of directives. We are going to achieve structural and attribute. By the way, we achieved component directives in last session. So can you recollect the techniques that we were used to perform visual activities? So when we started with Angular, we perform some functionalities on our DOM. Can you recollect? Slide 19. So let me open my first demo. So apart from data binding, what are all the functionalities we achieved with our DOM? So table list is my DOM. So what functionality we achieved for my list? Please relate with our. Wait. Read the question again. Can you recall the techniques that we used for performing visual activities? I'll go to my demo 1, the demos which we.
Interpolation.
For this.
Data binding.
Data binding, both one way and two way. You remember we called this disabled attribute and this disabled is holding true false. This is also a visual activity. All of you agree with this? The 7th line is also visual activity. What will happen in 7th line? Whomsoever I'm calling, please tell me. Let me call Brusikesh. Brusikesh, what is happening on 7th line?
Data binding, ma'am.
So we will get a text box, and in text box, the value will be filled with the employee ID. So whatever the data I placed with employee ID, here value will be displayed. It's a visual, I can see the value. So what is happening on 8th line? Shivani,
Yes, ma'am.
what is the visual activity happening on 8th line?
In the button that the word will be disabled.
Button will
Submit.
be disabled and
Yes.
enabled based on
Disable and submit form.
the attribute
Button.
disabled, and the value we are passing on this is disabled property.
Yes.
All right. Kasinath, what is happening on 13th line? What visual activity will happen on 13th line? Visual means the thing which the user is going to view.
Like the user will view the roll number, name, and mark.
I'm asking about 13th line.
It is like the list, ma'am, in which like we will be getting the variables, like the details of the students by like let x of student details.
You have not touched the exact visual activity happening on 13th line.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
know
Like
list.
by the ng for
Ah.
from there it will be getting the variable the x, the value of the x from the student details.
Depend upon the array, the
Yes, ma'am.
iterable I am passing. Let's assume student detail is having 10 items. What will happen to my list? Because of ng for, I will get 10 list. Here the visual activity is repetition of list with the help of what?
The help of
ng for. So because of this ng for, it's a directive. ng for of, we can achieve with asterisk ng for. Because of this directive, it will decide my visual activity. It happens for how many number of times. So we can able to control the view. So what I want to display with the help of components. By using components, component.ts, I can able to control whatever I want to view on my web page. Apart from that, contents on the view rendered dynamically by ng for and ng if. So what this ng if will do?
Like if the statement is like true or right, it will execute regarding that.
So let me take today's application. So let me use my directive rng asterisk ng if. Let me pass false. So what will happen? Whether I can able to control my visual activity with the help of ng if. So how we achieve here ng for? ng for is decide how many number of times the list will be repeated and it will be there on my view. So what will happen here? Do we get this hello all thrice on the output?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm asking a simple question.
Yes, ma'am.
So what will happen if I switch between true and false? If it is true, what will happen? If it is false, what will happen? Harsh?
If it's true, hello or
If it's
display
true,
3
it
times.
will print 3 times hello, and if it's false, it will not execute the div blocks.
So what I'm trying to say is, so here my ng for will decide how many number of times list needs to repeat. Here my ng if will decide based on the value I'm passing on ng if, this directive, it will decide what to be displayed on the view. Same is applicable for my component also. So if it is true, what will happen? We'll
Print hello 3 times.
If it is false, I will not get. So my ng for an ng if is also deciding the visual activities on my
is
web
like
page.
while loop.
Hmm. Apart from that, how were the template elements styled? So today I will introduce ng style. So ng class we will discuss in upcoming slide. As name implicits, what style will do? So depend upon the style, CSS style property I am passing, it will decide what way my elements to be displayed, styled and displayed on my view. These are the different things we can able to control the visual activity happening on the web page. We are just recollecting. This is what happened. So now we are going to introduce directives. So role of directives. Angular directives enhance the capability of HTML element by attaching custom behaviors to DOM. I will be having my DOM element on my component. So if I bind an attribute directives, my directives depend upon the functionality I define in the directives, that functionality will be added on my DOM element and it will be displayed on my web page. So directive enhance the capability of HTML elements in terms of visual effect. I will be having my HTML elements. So if I want to extend some functionality, behavioral in terms of display, I can use an attached directive. And directive we are going to create and we are going to give the functionality. So by default, we have some set of built-in directives. In this session, we are going to create our own custom directives. And in the custom directives, we will decide what type of effects my DOM element has to be possessed. So we have 3 types of directives. Again, I'll repeat. So with the help of Angular directives, we are going to enhance the capability of HTML elements. So whatever the functionality of my HTML element, additional behavior I'm going to provide with the help of directives. What do you mean by visual activity? I was telling this word for many times I mentioned this word.
Like
Niran,
hover
Niran.
and whatever we do with the cursor.
What is happening? Whenever I do any activity or by default, how it has to be displayed. Just relate with the first few slides, think and tell slides along with the concept. Simple its appearance as well as when we keep a mouse over, when you double click, when you focus. Some appearance part needs to be different, or it's not be a normal, it will be something new when we are doing such activity. So that can be customized and we can achieve with the help of directives. So we have 3 types of directives in Angular: structural, attribute, and component. Look into structural. Change appearance of DOM by adding or removing elements. So even this is a ngIf is very good example for structural directive. If I want, I will add. So I will be displaying my embedded elements. If I don't want, I will not display. So if I want to display or if I don't want to display, elements to be added or removed on a web page will be decided by my structural directive. So whatever we discussed on visual effect, no, ripple effect, hover, background color change effect, zoom in, zoom out, all falls under the category attribute directive. change appearance of DOM by modifying the attribute of DOM element. Adding and removing. As I said, the very good example of structural is NGF. If I pass through, these elements will be viewed, visible. DOM elements will be added or else it will be removed. So that is decided by my structural directives. Whereas whatever the example we came across, no, zoom in, zoom out on the card component, automatic playing of video, what is that, ripple effect. When I keep focus, some effects to be, some background color or some effects to be happening on my element. That appearance part I can control with the help of attribute directive. So simply I can say modify the structure of my DOM happened with structural. Styling happens with the help of attribute. Whatever I want to view, my component. If I have some 5 components, those 5 components are placed on my page. So that is nothing but my component directive. Components are directive with their own elements. Component comprises of n number of elements. Shall I get into the topic? Introduction part is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Nice. I'll repeat again. So directives. So in directives, we have 3 categories, everything related with my DOM, my elements, my view elements. Here, structural directive basically deals with what? Manipulating the DOM element, whether it needs to appear or whether it needs to hidden. So if I want to change the look and behavior of element, that can be achieved with attribute. So component is actually a main functionality, main class. So how all my HTML elements to be collated and it has to be instantiate for the first time, every time it has to be load. All my root functionality is happening with the help of component directive. So what are all directives? So directives are the classes. So which is JS class, which will add additional behavior to elements in our Angular application. So again, it's nothing but we are in OOPS language, TypeScript. So everything is a class. So whatever the directives I'm creating, everything is a class. In that class, I will add an additional behavior. So whenever I want, I will embed that additional behavior to my DOM elements. So point number 1, directives are declarable. They must be declared by ng module to be the usable in app. So we will declare that under ng module. I'll show you. So everything needs to be declared under ng module. You remember? So under ng module, we have already declared components. Today, what we will do? So we will declare our directives. So it is a base class of our Angular, root class of our Angular. So in order to define a directive, you should have to mark the class with decorator. And we need to provide some metadata. So when we are in an Angular, in order to indicate what is what, we will use decorator. So do we come across on any decorator before?
Yes, ma'am.
Just input.
At input at output component.
Even one is in front of you. The other one, which is most familiar to all of us, is
Component.
at component. And these are all some metadata information, some additional information to my component. And whenever if you are using the respective decorator, it needs to be imported. Basically, most of this core functionalities belongs to Angular core library. We will import and we will use. We will use the class. So component interface, it supplies configuration metadata for a Angular component. On init happens only once in the life cycle of my Angular page. Every time when I'm load, whatever the DOM elements to be loaded, it will be loaded. So, and this is my user defined class where we are importing product, and this belongs to product class. So today, we came across an @, component, @ng module. So today we are going to introduce @directive to indicate it is a directive component. And it has to take the decorator @directive. All the additional metadata information will be provided. So we will be having component and we will be having template. So if I have a directive, so we will create a directive, our own directive. So it consists of some predefined metadata information and additional functionality. Directive will be applied to where it's there in the diagram. I have a directive. To where I will be applied directive? Please look into the diagram. Do we apply the directive to my component? TypeScript file?
Template.
No. So directive is for what? Appearance, visual effect, appearance and behavior for my HTML, my DOM. So we will apply the directive to our template HTML. Remaining all are, and next week by probably Monday afternoon or Tuesday, we will come with services. We will create service and we will inject the service. So today we are going to create directives and we are going to embed to my DOM element. So why we want to go for directives? Angular templates are dynamic. So how it is going to render the element, everything is decided dynamically. Listen carefully. So when I define a directive, so directive instructs how to display, how my DOM appearance should be there. When an Angular renders template, it transforms the DOM according to the instruction we provided under directives. So whatever the instruction I provided under directive, my DOM will appear according to that. With background color, with this effect, with zoom effect, whatever. So moving on to custom directives. So why we want to go for custom directive? So why do we create directive when we already have built-in one? According to our requirement of application, I can customize and I can create my custom directives. Of course, custom directives is also reusable. So let's assume in our web page, we want to add some effects. I can create my own custom directive and I can apply. Once if I create that effect, I can reuse it in all my components. Custom directives helps to build reusable DOM manipulation logic. The reusable logic further helps in implementing DOM manipulation across multiple components. So structural directives in DOM manipulation. So as I said, structural directive basically deals with manipulating DOM element, adding an element and removing the element. Can you see what is happening on this flash image? I have my view component. Can you see? Earlier, we don't have this delete and the delete button and that we can say it as a label, list kind of a thing. So whenever the user enters, it keeps on adding an element. Have you experienced these kind of adding an element and removal?
Yes, ma'am.
Initially, there is no, irrespective of any number of items I am adding, it has to add the respective DOM. It has to duplicate. Do I want to fix number of elements here? Is it static? Let's assume we are in a job portal. So they want us to enter what are all the programming language you are familiar. You started entering C, add C++, you know, Java, you know. You are adding scripting language JavaScript, and you are adding Python. So I will specify some 11 language. So Geeta may specify some 15 languages. It is dynamic. You remember the point? So all these directives helps in adding the template dynamically. We do not decided how many number of rows it needs to display. So dynamically it needs to generate element. So for that we are using directives. So adding and deleting. So structural directives are responsible for HTML layout. They shape or reshape DOM, typically adding, removing, and manipulating the host element to which they are attached. Take time, analyze the structural directive flash image and this theory. So initially, I may not have some 3 labels and a button. So depend upon requirement. If I give add, it keep on adding. Not only 3, any number based on the user input. Adding, removing, and manipulating host element to which they are attached can be achieved with the help of structural directives. So this add address. So what is happening whenever if I click add address, certain template. So address, street number, city, country, the same set gets duplicated. If I click thrice, it will be repeated for 3 times. If it is 5 times, it will be repeated. Same set of attached element. See, everywhere there were 4 text box and a button. Address, street, city, and country. When as many number of times if you click add address, it keeps on generating the HTML elements dynamically. Is that clear? Shall I get into the custom structural directives?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's get into a demo. We are going to create a custom structural directive that function like built-in directives. So we are going to duplicate ngIf. So by default, we have ngIf, a built-in structural directive. And this is familiar to you all. So what does ngIf will do? Always directive structural will be prefixed with asterisk. ngIf, if I pass true, it will display. My embedded component will get displayed. If it is false, it will not display. So how we have ngIf true false. So ngIf is built in. We are going to create user defined structural directive which will duplicate this ngIf. Got it? You got the problem statement? I'll repeat, we are going to create a custom, our own structural directive, which needs to replicate this ngIf. Shall we get into this demo? What is this problem statement? Is that clear? Whatever we achieved with ngIf, we are going to do that. But instead of ngIf, what? Instead of ngIf built-in directive, we are going to create
Custom directive.
our own directives. We will create directive and we will add the functionalities. If it is true, display. If it is false, you should not able to display. Of course, you will have your parent and your embedded component. I'll quickly take the theory and then we will do a demo on the scene. So directive is created by running Angular CLI command. So we will use ng generate. How we generate component? library. So likewise, today we will use ng generate directive, your directive name. When you create a directive, when you generate a directive, what will happen? A file will be created. So whatever the name you created, here our name is check. So it will create a class. It will create a class check directive, and it will add with the annotation, decorator at directive and its metadata information. You can able to add the functionality of check directive with the help of selector name. This is a directive selector name, and it will import packages. This is a user defined. Here we will define. By default, it will import directive because you are using a directive decorator, and it will define a class. I'll show you. Let me open my terminal. So today I created a demo July 22 app. So please look into the command npx ng. You can use G and D. So abbreviated form is generate directive. So let me create a directive name, directive 1. So my directive name is dir1. So how many files it got created? Please read the
files.
theory. Read the theory. So it will create 2 files under src app dir1.directive. Your test file. The other one is your TypeScript file. And once if you create directive, what got updated?
Module.
App module.
I'll show you. So if you go to app module.ts, your entry file, under ng module declaration, it declares your directive 1, dir1 directive. And it will create a TypeScript class file. So it will import directive from Angular core, and there is a decorator. And this is a name we will use. By default, it will add with the name app. You can delete. So app dir1. And my class name is directive1 directive. So I gave dir1, it will add directive. How it is adding component? So likewise, here it is adding directive 1 when we have a constructor. This is our directive selector name, directive decorator, and this is our class. So we are going to import it. So use a word export, and there is a default constructor. So let's get into the demo. So this is just a directive. Nothing is there in the directive. I need to customize the code. I need to customize this directive class by adding the code so that I can achieve this ngIf functionality. So idea behind that concept is, so we need 2 class, which is template ref, and the one is view container ref. So template ref indicates references to the content enclosed within a container. So if you take the outer div, we call it as temp ref. So which is a reference of my content, which you're gonna to have n number of embedded content. So if you take this address, when you click add address, you will have your 4 text box and 4 label. All those things is called as my view container. So those view container will be placed inside my template ref. So template ref refers to the content enclosed within a container. View container is a reference to the container to which directive is applied. So whatever the content we are going to enclose within a container, my body part, which is called as my template ref. Let me go to my app component. I will copy paste the same. or just to differentiate, let me have some 5 paragraphs. So what is this div? Technically, div is called as so whenever if you want to achieve this custom structural directive of element to be disabled or enabled, view or hidden, I will be having n number of enclosed embedded content, my element. So the element which is gonna to embed is called as embedded, is called as my template ref. So this template ref consists of n number of my DOM element, my embedded view. This is called as my, see, just relate with this, where I am. Let me copy this. So I have my div. Inside div, I have paragraph. So I'm going to apply my custom structural directive to enable and disable, to view or hidden my view. So if you want to achieve this, we will go with the class name template ref and view container. So this div is called as
Template
it
ref.
falls under the category, correct? No, sorry. View container. This paragraph, these 5 paragraph falls under the category template ref. So references to the content enclosed within the container. So I'm going to enclose all my paragraph inside my container div. So these are the enclosed content. So this is referred with the help of class template ref. The container where it holds all my template ref is called as view container. So I will be applying directive to my view container or template ref in order to display. If I want my embedded paragraph tag to be visible or hidden, I will apply the property to where? Where I will apply the directive?
View container.
You are right. So this is, we applied built-in directive ngIf. Now I'm going to apply user-defined directive. I will apply to paragraph or I will apply to div. We will apply to div. So what notation we need to use for structural directive? We need to use asterisk. And what is a directive? Select our name. What is the selector name?
App direct.
App directive. So we will apply whether it is true or false. So it is a duplicate. So we have ngIf, like sorry, directive one. Yeah. See, again I'm repeating. So we are going to duplicate this ngIf. ngIf is built in. ngIf is built in. We are going to create user defined. So we are going to create a custom directive, which is app directive. So I will be applying asterisk, my user defined directive selector name, and I will pass true false. So if it is true, my view container will hold my template ref. If it is false, it will not, but I have to write the logic. Let me complete the theory and I will write the logic. So references the container to which directive is applied. So template ref is a content enclosed within the container. So what I want to pass to an input to my directive, I will get that at input. So we will use setter and I will use get set. How we have get set? Likewise, we will use setter method and you will setter and we will set the value true or false. So we will reference the class template ref and view container. Both you will declare inside your constructor. So it's a private variable. Create a reference. So you will be declaring inside your constructor. Okay, you can create your own reference. Let it be template ref. It belongs to the type template ref. So template ref is a class. It represents an embedded template that can be used to instantiate embedded views. So I'm going to embed n number of views inside my temp ref. To instantiate embedded views based on template, we will use view container reference. So template ref belongs to Angular core. It will automatically import. Here you quick fix it. And it can be of any type. As of now, we don't know the type. Generics is mandatory. And declare one another reference, which is, it can be view container reference. So declare the reference for both the classes, template ref and view container. And here you decide. I'm going to get an input. Where we are going to get the input? Where we will use this input? My parent component. What is my parent component?
App component.
App component.
Here I will pass. So here I will use asterisk app directive 1. I will pass true or false. This true and false will be passed from my parent to my directive. So call with input and use setter. Set what is my directive name?
App dir1.
dir1. dir1. And I'm gonna to get the value. Okay, let me give it as data. It is of the type Boolean. Yeah. So use setter. I'm gonna to get Boolean value. So depend upon the Boolean value initially. If it is true, in my view container or reference. So this is my class and I'm going to refer with the help of reference name. So how we define a variable and object name. So likewise, view container reference is referred with this property name. Dot. We have to create an embedded view. So please read the theory again. We are going to represent an embedded template that can be used to instantiate embedded view. In order to instantiate embedded view based on the template, we will use view container reference method called as create embedded view. Can you see the method? So we can achieve this embedded view with the help of this method. So in this method, I will pass my template reference. I'll check the code. So let me open my notepad. Try to relate with the code. So in my view container, we have created a reference view container. I'm going to create I'm calling create embedded view method. If the data value is true, this template reference will be created and as an embedded view of my view container. If it is false, will it get displayed? No. All of you got the logic behind? I'm going to call setter method. I'm going to set this app directive based on the input value data. If the data is true, this embedded view will be added as a template of my view container. Okay, what I can do is initially, so let me make view container as clear. Nothing is there in my view container. It's empty. So when it is true, I'm going to add my template ref as an embedded view of my view container. So by the way, my div tag is my view container. All my 5 paragraph tag, which is embedded inside my div, is template ref. I'm going to add this template ref only if the data value is true. I don't have else part. Lacked. Shall we check the output? So if it is true, depend upon the value I'm passing with my data, and it is holding the Boolean value true, false. If it is true, my view container is embedding this template ref, else it will not. So let me pass true first. Again, I'm telling duplicate of your ngIf. So let me give true initially. So we are getting good morning 10 times because of true. So what will happen if I pass false in both the places?
Blank.
Output is not a very big deal. The idea behind is replicating ngIf with user-defined custom structural directive. The DOM element, which is enclosing embedded views, a view container reference. And this is your template reference. This is the template. My view container, based on my directive value, it decides my template reference to be visible or not, to be made visible or not. So they used to check, I used a dir1. So by default, the selector name, you can modify it. You can give only dir1. And the class name, directive decorator, directive class. We will use 2 reference. We will create 2 reference object for template reference class and view container ref. So view container ref is holding this directive, and we are going to pass the value. Based on that, it decides. How it works. Asterisk notation in structural directive tells Angular we have a structural directive and we will manipulate the DOM. If I pass asterisk followed with, it indicates we have attached the structural directive of DOM. Behind the scene, Angular converts every structural directive to ng template. Okay, this is new. So look into this theory. So we have provided div asterisk app directive 1, but my machine, my Angular automatically converts asterisk check to what? Ng template. Ng template is a bunch of HTML tags enclosed in an HTML element. So if you look into this code, I have provided div asterisk app directive 1. So this indicates I'm going to attach a structural directive to my DOM element. So machine will consider this as so machine will consider this as, so it will take ng template app dir1 and it takes the value true or false. Here it is not required. Internally, this custom directive will be converted to ng template. ng template is an Angular element for rendering HTML. So whether it needs to render my embedded view or not, it will be decided by ng template. It is never displayed directly. So don't worry about ng template. So I just wanted to show you. So internally, my machine will consider my custom structural directive to ng template. But ng template, by the way, it works. So I called ng if app directive, both are false, only my template is true. So if my ng template is true, it will display my attached embedded view on the output. So behind the scene, Angular automatically converts all the structural directive. So we will put only asterisk and structural directive. Your Angular converts that corresponding to ng template. And it use property binding. And in the place of binding, we will use our directive name. Additional information. So working of structural directive in detail, whatever we discussed with the demo, we will repeat again. Please look into it. Structural directive tells Angular to inject tempref. Tempref is a class and a way to reference ng template in a component or a directive class. So it is a class and it is a way of referencing template in a component. Please look into the second point. The template is inserted to DOM when the condition is true. If it is true, it calls which method? What is the method we used?
Create embedded view.
Create embedded view of view container reference. When it is true, it calls this method. Clear will remove the template from DOM. So view container, we already used clear. By default, it will be cleared. If the value is true, I'm calling create embedded view and I am inserting my template ref in my view container. View container reference contains the reference to the host element that hosts the directive. Here div is a host element which is hosting my custom directive. Here, ninth line. Here, div tag, I'm going to act like a host. Paragraph tag is going to act like an embedded view. There is a small typo error. It should be div, not delay. Is the following code valid for applying custom structural directive delay? Assume like div delay 1000. There is a div close tag. Whether it is correct?
No.
What is missing?
Star.
Asterisk notation is missing. So structural directive can be added to my DOM with asterisk. Identify the element referenced by template ref and view container.
And the first line is the view container.
So if you look into this, the outer div asterisk repeat based on the item list, this block will get repeated. So this outer div is called as
View container.
View container.
inside div item.name is called as template.
Template.
Okay. So that's it about one demo on custom directive, which is a duplicate of your ngIf. So let's get into attribute directive. What is the role of attribute? Quickly, what is the role of structural directive? What structural directive does on my component?
Reshaping.
Change the appearance of DOM.
No. We are not changing the appearance.
Adding and removing.
Adding and removing DOM elements. Do we change Okay, you are telling about appearance in the sense the view element, but the word appearance is related to styles. So whether my HTML element to be visible or hidden, so display or not, is decided by structural. The way it should display the appearance part. So how my DOM element needs to be displayed. You can say based on styling will be decided by our attribute directives. So role of attribute directive. Attribute directive listen and modify the behavior of HTML attribute property of component. So custom attribute directive. We are going to create a custom attribute directive focus. Or create a custom attribute directive that change the background color of element when it receive focus. Whenever I am focusing on my text box, it should change the background color. When I leave when the focus leaves, when I not focus, the background color needs to reset. For that, we are going to create a custom attribute directive. So we are going to create a directive, same step. Earlier, we created one directive. You decide whether it is for structural or whether it is for attribute. So heading is attribute, typo error. So we are going to create focus directive, ng generate directive focus. So by default, only you will get directive decorator and directive class. So according to the requirement of this background, when you keep focus event, what is the event? We are going to handle focus event. When you focus your mouse cursor on that control, what is the background color? When you keep outside, what did you be done? So here we need to include two reference class. One is host listener, another one is host binding. So earlier we included temp-ref and view container. So view container holds all other my embedded view. So this embedded view is called as temp-ref, and we used to create embedded view method. So we referenced view container and template ref. So now we need to include two referenced class. One is host listener, another one is host binding. What is the purpose of host binding? Binds BG color with background color style property. So what functionality you are going to apply for your element, which will be decided by my host binding. So it binds the functionality to my DOM element. It can be a label, it can be my paragraph, or it can be my input text box. So whereas whenever I am placing an event, focus event, click event, mouse hover event, the event can be triggered, and with corresponding to which event my directive needs to apply the respective styling appearance. That will be decided by host listener. Okay, so let me get into my demo. So listen, let me generate a directive focus 1. So it creates focus 1 directive class and directive decorator and directive selector name. Here we want to use host binding. So what is the role of host binding? It types host binding all the metadata information to which element I want to host. To what event I'm gonna to
Focus.
yeah. So what event See, this listener is not new to us. When I have an event, what is the role of listener? So we discussed already. So we have an event, click event. So, and we will be having a method, and technically we call it as event handler. So which is nothing but my method where I will write all the functionality. So I will be triggering my click event onto my button. So when I click a button, this corresponding click event needs to bind to the respective method. That happens with the help of listener interface. So listener will listen the respective event and bind to the method. When I focus, whereas here, when I focus a label or when I focus a text box, so what needs to be done? The respective method, what action code we need to write, the functionality, which will be done with the help of host listener. So it can be for same, it can be focus event, or it can be blur event, or it can be mouse hover event. So irrespective of whatever the event I'm placing on my DOM element, that will be bind to an appropriate method with the help of listener interface. And here we are using the class host listener. So whereas when I focus, what needs to be done, what property, what styling property I want to apply. So that I will decide with the help of host binding. Binding will bind to the respective styling functionality. Listen will listen the appropriate event to the respective handler method. In Angular, we will use host binding and host listener. So it is a decorator that binds DOM event to the host listener and supplies all the information. Listen, please look into the third point. Angular invokes the supplied handler method when the host element emits the specified event and updates the result. When I click a button, if I want to alert some good morning message, my listener will listen the event and it will bind the method and it will return the corresponding result. So likewise, here we will use host listener. When I keep a mouse cursor focus, my host listener will listen the event and it will bind to the method. And what will be there in my method? So let's assume I want to keep a background color as green. So if I blur, if I keep a mouse cursor outside, no background color, or I want to keep a background color as red. So if I keep this event, this event will be bind to the method and result also will return back to my corresponding DOM element only with the help of host listener. Binding will bind to the respective styling property. So host listener listens to the focus event and calls to the on focus event handler. It's a method where I will write the logic. Listens the blur event and calls blur event handler method. Whereas host binding binds the respective appearance, styling I want to do. Here is nothing but appearance. I need to use style property, style.background color. And we are going to get the input from the parent class, parent component. So parent component will pass the color. That color I'm going to set in my setter method. So let me complete it. Step number 1, I want to get an input. So the input I'm going to get from my directive app focus 1. And what I'm going to get a color of any type. If you know the type, you can give the type. For 8th and 9th line is clear. I'm going to get an input from my parent component. Now you give. So let's assume I have an input text box. text. So what is the notation we want to give? Look into the slide. So it is an attribute directive. No need to go for asterisk notation. You will be calling your attribute directive and you will be passing the value.
Okay.
Okay. Here my selector name is app focus and I can give any value. So let it be red. So this red, don't forget I am in component. From component, I'm going to pass the value to my directive. So app focus 1 is my attribute directive and red is my value. So that you can capture at the help of at input. So whenever I am passing this user defined attribute directive and whatever the value I'm passing, it will be captured with my property name color. You can give any name. I'm just giving color name. So to which it needs to bind, what I need to bind. So that you will decide with the help of host binding. So we will use decorator. Decorator that marks DOM property as a host binding, supplies all the information. Please look into the second line. Angular automatically checks the host binding property during the change detection and bind to the appropriate host element. Here the host element is input box. I will reuse also. By the way, as of now, I'm using my host element as input. So whatever the property I want to bind, what property? I can use background color. So how can I achieve? So with the help of style dot background color. So in host binding, I'm going to bind with the style property background color. And so let me give a variable. Let's assume property name as BG color. By default, nothing. When I listen, please look into the syntax. Host listener will listen to the event. Can you look into the parameter we want to pass here? It can be click event, it can be hover event, or it can be what event I can pass.
Okay.
Focus. Focus is an event and which you have to pass a string type. When it focus, so what method we are going to call? So it will call on focus method. Listen to focus event and call on focus event handler. On focus method, this dot BG color is equal to color name, whatever the color name I'm passing. So when it is blur event, we need to call the event handler on blur. You can give empty color or you give your own color. So let's assume. So I'm giving green. So when I keep a mouse cursor over, what is the difference between green and this dot color name?
This dot color name from
What we give the color
This dot
red
name will be given by
input. By the
manually we are giving.
This is a static hard-coded value. This I'm getting from parent. I'm capturing it in a property and assigning. Here also I can give my own color also. So host listener will capture, it will capture or listen to the respective event and it will bind. So the respective event will be bind to the method event handler with the help of listener. Here we are using host listener, whereas host binding will bind to the corresponding appearance or whatever the functionality you want to appear. You can give hard-coded value also. I'll do both the thing. So So let me give for paragraph also. App, can I reuse it? Let me give gray. Can I reuse app focus 1?
Yes, ma'am.
Possible?
Yes, ma'am.
Possible. Equal to, let me give. So this is a speciality of directive, custom directive. So whenever I keep a mouse cursor focus, so the corresponding background color will be applied for my host element, my text box, as well as my 2 paragraph. By the way, it will not appear. So let me make it as true. Save all.
And we don't need star in this.
Huh?
Star as focus.
No, your voice not reached. There is Niranjan.
Ma'am, we use star before.
Asterisk is only for structural. We are in attribute directive.
Yes. Okay.
All right. So by default, no color, nothing. So when I keep a mouse cursor focus, when I keep a cursor inside my text box, what is happening? Whatever the focus event, background color. When I keep a mouse cursor outside, same thing is applicable. It's not appearing. App focus 1. It has to be appear for paragraph also. What mistake I did. It should work. Maybe it's focus over alone, it's working. Let me try for hover. See, text box is having focus and blur. I tried the same for paragraph. It's not working. Let me try for hover event. No, I just keep mouse cursor focus. It's not focusing. I know it's only for text box. Let's try it.
And can check for app root work. Right.
Wait, let me check once. No. When we keep a mouse cursor inside the text box, the event which is triggering is focus. When we keep outside, by default blur. We will not try focus and blur. Let us try for hover. For paragraph. For any of the element. For any other element. Or 1 second. Let us try the same for mouse enters on mouse. Yeah, enter caps only. This dot bg color is equal to some color. See, focus and blur is only for text box. So when you enter mouse, let me copy paste. Let me keep it for the other event. Mouse leave. When I leave, should be some gray. Guys, are you with me? Focusing, keeping your cursor inside your text box and outside. When I enter, my mouse enters on my paragraph. So you can go with this event. When mouse enters, it will come with this background color. And by the way, it is reusable. When I enter, my mouse enters. When my mouse, that I applied only for these two paragraphs. You can apply to your div and you can try. All right, output is not a very big deal. The idea behind is customizing our attribute directive. Post binding, what style property I'm going to bind? It listens to an appropriate event and it binds to an appropriate event handler method. On focus, on blur, on mouse, enter, everything is a method. We technically call it as event handler. Nothing is new to us. Is that clear? Let me complete the theory. Guys, is that clear? Shall I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll complete the, that's it. It's a simple session. Lost my connection. At host binding and at host listener. This decorator allows directives to communicate with the host element. Host element. So wherever I'm calling my paragraph, my text box, my label, all were my host element. It will communicate with my host element and it will set the property. This decorator is used to bind the DOM property to the element to an instance variable in our custom Angular directive. So by using our custom Angular directive, where I'm going to apply, see here. Here my text box, all the three text box and these two paragraph are my host element. So from host element, the communication is happening with my directive with the help of at host binding. What this listener will do? It will allow the interaction with the event happening on my host element. Whatever the event I'm triggering on my host element, that will be captured and it will be bind to the appropriate event handler method with the help of host listener. This will allow the directive to listen to an event on its host element. Whenever the corresponding event triggers, the directive calls the event handler, which is nothing but our method, with the decorator at host listener and modifies whatever the requirement, background color, whatever you want to do, that modification will happen inside the method, my event handler method, which further modifies the style property of my DOM. My host element, my custom attribute directive and its value, this is optional. You just call. If it is not gray, whatever the parameter, can I able to call? If I am not passing, you no need to capture with an input. You give your own value. So host binding will communicate with my host element on what property I want to change. Whereas irrespective of whatever is happening on my host element, where I called this directive, the appropriate event will be called and it will be bind to the event handler method with the help of host listener decorator. So one way you can do with host binding and host listener, we have few more other ways. One is element ref, the other one is renderer 2. So we will discuss on element ref and renderer 2 after a break. With this, the session is getting over. So I want all of you to give a try on this 2 demos, structural directive with view container ref and template ref. We went on with host binding and host listener. Here we have a tight coupling. So in order to remove this tight coupling between my host element and my respective decorators, inside I'm calling it directly. So in order to overcome that, we have element ref and renderer reference. So no problem, both we will discuss. So this renderer will give you a loose coupling between our HTML DOM element and my respective method property. So that we will discuss after some time. We can also achieve this with the help of element ref, reference and renderer. That part alone we will discuss. So with this, our directive gets over. So I want all of you to settle down with these 2 demos. Later I'll introduce after some 30 minutes, after some half an hour, I'll introduce on this last topic on your attribute directive, which is element ref. All right, we will continue the remaining 4 slides after some time. You can take a break of 10 minutes. So have your morning break.
Recording stopped.
It's 11:10 in my clock. Come back at 11:20. We'll practice and get into the topic for some time. Then we'll complete those 2 classes and I'll roll out the sprint. It's 11:20. Okay, guys, see you after a break.